Hi, I'm Shannon Gonter. I'm a licensed professional clinical counselor in Louisville, Kentucky. My practice is with Therapy by Shannon. Today, we're going to be talking about self-care. Some of it is going to be the traditional self-care talk. We're going to give different ways that you can add self-care into your life. But a lot of the beginning part of it is really going to be about exploring and kind of breaking apart and down the word selfish and kind of transitioning it into self-ish. So just kind of will walk us through some of this. Of course, before getting started, since I am a licensed mental health professional, this is just a disclaimer that this is a workshop for educational purposes. This is not a substitute for medical or mental health care. Attending this workshop does not constitute us being in a therapeutic relationship of any sort. And of course, if you are experiencing a crisis, please consult with a medical professional, call 911, go to your nearest hospital to get assistance. With that, so like I said, we're going to break down these two spaces. First, traditionally, what I think of when we think about the word selfish is lacking consideration for others, concerned only with our own personal profit or pleasure, only making choices that benefit us, being very careless. These are a lot of messages that we get from our families, from society. We have voices inside of our head that kind of reinforce these as well. And of course, there is an experience for this because it's a real thing. Lots of times we can be careless. We can put our needs above others, and it can be at the expense of others. So it's not saying that selfish doesn't exist, but it's just trying to create an opportunity for there to be other options for this word to kind of be applied for our to ourselves. So by putting the kind of hyphen and making it not selfish, but self-ish, really focusing on taking care of yourself first, putting yourself first, placing value on your needs, and acknowledging that your limited resources and understanding is kind of what you're going to be able to prioritize. And that's kind of what becomes your life. And so really being able to kind of intentionally slow down and be with that for a little bit to explore what that means for you. You know, do you have a lot of negative connotations around putting yourself first? What does it mean to acknowledge that you have needs and that sometimes you put those needs first on the to-do list? And, you know, sometimes some of us are going to have a lot more maybe negative connotations or vibes or sensations around putting our needs first. And others of us maybe have done a lot of intentional healing and work around this. And so it's not that difficult for us to put our needs first and to understand that we've got to take care of ourselves first before we take care of others. But it really is, of course, just different human to human. We're all very unique in that way. And yeah, these were just kind of some cute graphics. You're not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. And then the traditional selfish side, of course, I love myself and me and I. So unlearning some things about selfish so we can be more self-ish. So like I said, we get lots of messages from society, from teachers at a very early age that kind of teach us like it's always a good thing to do to put other people's needs before ourselves. That means you're like a good person or a good human. Of course, not like totally wrong. Sometimes it is good to put other people's needs before yours. But the issue with this mentality is that it leaves us with very, very little wiggle room for us to insert our own needs in there, often leaving us depleted and with like minimal to zero energy left to actually meet our own needs. because we're so focused on meeting everyone else's needs and making sure everyone else is good before we're actually checking in with ourselves, to check in if we have our own needs. So this again is just like a nice little graphic to show you, like, you don't call your cell phone for being you don't call your cell phone selfish when it needs its battery recharge. So why call ourselves selfish when we need some recharging? It's really difficult, of course, for us to fit in this like self-care space, and to recharge in whatever way that may mean for us, because it's really difficult to learn that we have needs. Like, a lot of us don't even know how to identify things that we like to do, or things that would recharge us, or things that would really help us in that way. Because we've heard so many times, like, especially in childhood, of like, stop being selfish, let Sally go first, you need to make sure you're sharing to be nice and be a good person. And these phrases we bring with us into adulthood. Of course, we're adults now, so they sound and look a little bit different. But the issue with this is that now we confuse all this essential self-care with being selfish. And therefore, we just end up not doing any of it, because we don't want to be selfish humans. We want to be good people. And then this just leaves us with no way of recharging our batteries and being very depleted and tired, and overwhelmed. So, starting with the basics, of course, what is self-care? It's an activity with built-in intentionality in it to take care of ourselves. Lots of ways to do it. We'll review those kind of in later slides. Of course, who should do it? Everyone. Babies, kids, adults, whoever. Everyone should be doing self-care of some sort. And these are just kind of the different physical, emotional, social, all sorts of types of self-care that we'll break down in a little bit. How to fit self-care into your already busy day, because I know, like, it's sometimes, we just keep adding things to the calendar when we've already got jam-packed calendars, and we're like, oof, I don't really want to go to that yoga class, but I'm just going to put it on there because I know it's good for me. And then we don't end up going to that yoga class because we're exhausted and we don't want to do anything at 7 p.m. when we've got home from work and cooked and gotten the kids to bed, or whatever it may be. And then we get into a space where we beat ourselves up for not going to yoga because we know it's good for us and it helps us relax and it's good physically. And so it just starts this whole cycle where it's like, that's not self-care. That's just adding more of to your to-do list. So the point of self-care is not to add more to the to-do list. That is just going to add you more stress. But the goal is to really create and allow some space for you to figure out your needs, so you can show up and be more present, more focused, and ready to tackle those items that are on your schedule. Because quite honestly, it is nice and easy sometimes to add things to the calendar. But if we're just adding them to the calendar because we know we should do them and we don't really want to do them, they're likely not going to get done. And if they do get done, they may not have that same recharging, refilling capacity that they may have been if they were just kind of pure self-care, opposed to this a little bit of pressure self-care that happens sometimes. Before going into a lot more about self-care, I do like to just kind of break down like what self-care is and what self-care is not, because there are a lot of myths or misconceptions out there about self-care. So the first thing that self-care is, of course, is that it is something that is very intentional. So this is time set aside for you to focus on you. And of course, you're going to be like, yeah, duh, like it's in the title, caring for yourself. But it's really, really, really important that you take some time to think about, like, how do you care for yourself on a day-to-day basis? And not forgetting the little things like drinking enough water, brushing your teeth multiple times a day, making sure you're getting enough sleep, taking that 5 seconds before you turn your car on when you get in your car to like take a deep breath and decompress. These are little things that we do for ourselves throughout the day that are intentional things that do really help us in our self-care. Something else self-care definitely is necessary. Um, we are humans living on this planet, and we live in a very high pressured culture. And so it is very important that you need to be having things in your life that refuel you rather than take from you, because there's so many things that take from us in this society and with work and home life and school and all other things. Um, so we really got to make sure we have something to kind of balance that out. I don't really like the word balance because it kind of adds some pressure that like we have to keep it even, but it's really thinking of it as like a teeter totter. Like you've got to go in and out of, like, if this is a really busy month at work and you don't have a lot of time for your self-care items, making sure that gets evened out after the busy season at work is over, so you're not always just up here and like work and to-do list land, that you're also kind of being able to ebb and flow between those. And then finally, self-care is really caring. It's something that you do to take care of yourself. It is not something that you do just because you need to add it on your to-do list or because you read a blog and they told you to do it and so you should do it. We really, really got to ground ourselves in this is our way to show our body, show all of our internal beings that we care about them, and that it's really going to help us. Like if we can connect with these things inside of us in a way, it's really going to help us in the future to have that energy and have that ability to show up in our present lives or in our today lives to be more present. Some kind of things, of course, self-care is not selfish. In order to do it, we do need to consider our own needs, of course, and this commonly gets mixed up with selfishness, but remember that we often need to do a better job at caring for ourselves so that we can show up for those people in our lives to care for them and to model for others how to care for themselves. And kind of the analogy here is like, or the space that a lot of people use is like if you're on an airplane and it's going down and you're about to crash or whatever they say, you always have to put on your face mask to get that oxygen before being able to help someone next to you. So that's the space of like really got to be able to care for yourself before we can show up in a space to adequately care for other people. Self-care does not have to be expensive. Of course, there are massages and retreats and classes that you can pay money for that can get quite expensive. But again, remembering that like brushing your teeth and like drinking water and going to work and talking to a friend or whatever it is, like those are self-care items too. So not all self-care has to be like bubble baths and massages that are, trendy and kind of expensive sometimes. Self-care also, again, like we talked about, is not adding more of. You shouldn't be forcing yourself to do self-care. It shouldn't be like something that is like sucking more energy out of you. It should be something that's filling you up. So if you have your schedule filled with self-care items, but it's exhausting, kind of rethinking those things. Like, what is the motives of those things? Why are you doing those things? Why are those things on your to-do list? If they're sucking more out of you opposed to filling you up. There may be some things to kind of deconstruct and work with in that motive area to kind of shift and change how it's settling on you in the end. And then, of course, self-care is not crisis management. This is something that often happens is like we're in a crisis and we're like, oh, we need to like do self-care to like help us. Sure, sometimes it can help, but it's not intended to be used when you're super stressed or you're burned out. It's supposed to be a preventative space to avoid getting to those spaces. So self-care items should be integrated into your days and your routines, again, to avoid getting to those super high levels that lead to emotional and physical burnout. So there are some things that you can do to take a self-care assessment. I'll kind of link these links here for you so you can go and do them. They're really cool. I mean, they're, again, just here to give you more information about certain things and for you to kind of do an inventory of how you're caring for yourself on a daily basis. So just remember that you're just using these for like data, just because there's certain things on the assessments that they recommend doing. Again, doesn't mean you need to do it. It may not be something that's going to be helpful for you. These are just really general assessments that are good to kind of use and gauge where you're at in this like self-care world. So this is where it gets into a little bit more of the examples of like actual things that you can do self-care wise. Lots of people are always like, just tell me what to do. If we're in a therapeutic relationship, I don't tell my clients what to do. That's not the space of a counselor in your life to give you advice and to tell you what to do. But I do know that is super helpful to be able to have some tangible things to go back to and to kind of try on. Again, just because it's on these lists does not mean you need to go out and do those things, because personally for me, if I was to go out and do all of these things, I'm a very much of a doer, and it would just seem like doing more of and adding more to my to-do list when I already have so many things on my to-do list. So just thinking about them, trying them on, maybe trying them and see what it does for you. But sometimes in that self-care journey, just thinking about it can be really helpful. So for example, taking a day trip or a mini vacation, maybe financially or safety wise, or for whatever reasons, taking that day trip or mini vacation is not in the cards for you like this weekend or next weekend, but some of that planning and some of that thought and intentionality that can go into planning that day trip or that mini vacation can be extended. So then maybe this summer you can go take that mini vacation, and the self-care involved in that kind of journey gets kind of spread out throughout the month or whatever it may be. But just to kind of read some of these in case you guys are missing some of them: getting a massage, getting enough sleep, wearing clothes that you feel good in, being sexual with yourself or partners, exercising, eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. I like to say every day because sometimes our eating gets a little bit thrown off based on our schedules. But here are some more. Those were more physical. This is more psychological self-care example. So that being curious space is really important to do. So whenever something's coming up inside of you, if you can meet it with curiosity, it's going to be super helpful to being able to explore it. A lot of times something will pop up in our head, and then we have something else, another part of us that comes online to judge it or critique it, or to tell it that it's bad or shut up, whatever it may be. So really being able to just create space from these things that pop up inside of us, whether they be thoughts or feelings or sensations, and really just try to listen and understand where they're coming from. But yeah, some other things, read something that's not work related. You can journal. You can say no to extra responsibilities, which is surely hard sometimes. And you could put down your phone or do a digital detox. Of course, during this past year or so, sometimes that's difficult to do so, since our phones and online communication has been such a helpful tool for us to be able to get through some difficult times. But just remembering that, like, just because something is helpful right now doesn't mean that if we take it to the extremities, it's going to stay helpful. So really just trying to get curious and observe that gauge for yourself. Emotional self-care items, super important. These are aimed to enhance your emotional literacy, assist one in navigating your emotions, increasing empathy for yourself and others, managing stress more effectively, and developing compassion for yourself and others. Allowing yourself to cry is not something that everyone is comfortable in doing, or sometimes when we feel like we are crying, we can't get ourselves to stop crying. And so again, thinking of it on a spectrum of trying to figure out where you are on that spectrum and what's going to be most helpful for you. Boundaries is super important for emotional self-care. Play is so important for emotional self-care. As adults, we don't allow ourselves to play enough. And everything is like so serious and work related and to-do list and just, yeah, not fun. And so adding that play in, or even like watching kids or watching other people play, can be really helpful in trying to like reteach ourselves and learn how to play again. Because unfortunately, it's something we don't always bring into adulthood and we sometimes forget how to do. Social self-care, these are some examples. You know, you can go and meet new people, whether that be online or in person. You can volunteer, you can do intramural sports, you can ask help from others when needed. Lots of ways to include that social self-care into your life with friends, family, coworkers. Professional self-care. This is my favorite one I always like. Eating a full meal at lunch away from your desk. So that working lunch is so helpful for our productivity sides, but it's not so helpful in our way of like recharging and stepping away. And remember, when we're trying to create new patterns for ourselves and trying to create space from certain things, to allow something else to come online, lunch is a perfect time to do that. I know we don't all maybe work from home or have certain bosses and certain places that don't allow us to take that 30-minute or hour-long lunch every day. But if you do have that privilege and that luxury, I really would try to do it and try to make it something that is recharging you, opposed to like shoving food in your mouth to get back to work as quick as possible. Environmental self-care items. So this is something like keeping your environment clean or clutter-free or organized, whether this be at work or at home. So taking care of your car, getting oil changes, cleaning it, doing your dishes or cleaning your house, not littering, maybe recycling when you can. These are all things that we do to care for the environment. But since we are humans living in the environment, there are sometimes personal things that we do that can kind of spiderweb effect and assist in those ways. Spiritual self-care, spirituality, of course, means something different to everyone on that spectrum. So really just trying to figure out ways that your beliefs and values are important to you and how you know that. So whether that's through a kind of community, more like traditional religion space, or whether it's something you do on your own, or just meditation or reading things, going on retreats, taking time to reflect, again, on that spectrum of where spirituality lives and how it plays into our life. So many varieties and no right or wrong way to do it. Again, it's that intentionality that we're putting into having some self-care in this realm. Financial self-care, something we usually forget about, but something that's super important. Being responsible with your finances and having a conscious relationship with money is something that not a lot of us are taught how to do, but it's something that is super important and can definitely lower some of those stress levels, because finances are a real big stressor in a lot of our lives. And again, we're not really taught to talk about them. So it's really hard to connect with people about it because we're supposed to keep our finances hush hush, or there's a lot of shame and a lot of difficult things attached to them. So really just trying to bring that intentionality and curiosity to some of these self-care items surrounding your finances to see what parts maybe need some love in or need some time spent with them. And of course, as always, questions, feel free to email me with any questions. Here's my contact information, email, website. Have a pretty good presence on Instagram too. like I said, this was just like a short little workshop on self-care and how to redefine that like selfish word to make it fit into our lives a little bit more on the spectrum that it lives on. And yeah, like I said, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you are ever interested in what working with me in a counselor client relationship would look like, just feel free to reach out and we can explore that. I give free consultations to individuals, and sometimes those consultations end with us scheduling an intake session and starting some individual mental health counseling sessions. But other times it just ends with maybe giving you a little bit more information about what counseling is. And maybe it's not something that's a good fit for you. So maybe I can connect you with another provider who would be a good fit for you, or another modality of healing. There's lots of options out there. And the idea of helping and healing professionals or professions is to meet you where you're at. So sometimes for people, I'm going to be the provider for them because they're looking for counseling. And other times I talk to people who just don't want that and they want something else to help them along their journey. So always here to help connect and advocate for mental wellness and mental clarity inside of our heads. So if I can help you in any way, just let me know. But as always, really enjoy yeah, being here and being with you guys. References that I use for this are right here. And like I said, those self-care assessments, I'll put up the links to those. Okay,